South Africa has said goodbye to the last great hero of the struggle against apartheid. The funeral of Archbishop Desmond Tutu was held in the same place he used the pulpit for decades to rail against a brutal white minority regime. At a modest ceremony, family, friends, clergy and politicians gathered at Cape Town's St George's Cathedral. President Cyril Ramaphosa delivered the main eulogy at the official state funeral, describing Tutu as a crusader in the struggle for freedom and justice around the world. And we can cross now straight to journalist Tutu Khumalo, who's in Cape Town. Tutu, now this is the funeral of a man who wanted the cheapest coffin available. And of course, it's a funeral being held in the middle of a pandemic, so the numbers allowed are limited. Is this the kind of ceremony that Desmond Tutu would have been happy with, would you say?
For a funeral of a person like Desmond Tutu, one would expect thousands to attend. One would expect dignitaries coming from all over the world. But you're right, it did not happen like that because of COVID restrictions. The numbers were low. But coincidentally, this is some kind of funeral that Tutu wanted. The instructions that he left to his church was that he doesn't want a big funeral. He doesn't want a glamorous funeral. He wanted to be low-key because when he was alive, he fought for the poor. He identified himself with the poor. So their cause, they would not afford such a funeral, and he doesn't want people to remember him for a funeral that was big and attended by many people. We also know that also from the coffin that we saw, as you specified also, that it was just a simple coffin, not that expensive casket that we have always seen. So this is a man who wanted simplicity. He wanted to go, he lived simply, and he wanted to go simple. And I think those that were given instructions did exactly that. And maybe thank God to him because COVID also did exactly that, limiting the numbers that were coming here. In fact, in the morning of his funeral, there was some rain, something that would have even deterred people who wanted to brave and come even if uninvited. So the situation did not allow the numbers, and I think this is a kind of a funeral that Tutu would have liked.
Now, Tutu will be remembered for helping end apartheid, of course, but also for his humour. So let's listen in to what South African President Cyril Ramaphosa had to say about him.
If Archbishop Desmond Tutu were here, he would have said, hey, why are you looking so glum, so unhappy? He would have wanted to elicit a smile, a laughter from amongst all of us. That was the type of person that he was.
Most of all, of course, Tutu will be remembered as a hero for the struggle against apartheid and for his idea of restorative justice. Could you describe to us briefly what restorative justice actually is?
Started after South Africa's independence, when the country gained freedom. We know that apartheid, the injustices of apartheid were still fresh in the minds of people, and it was difficult for the black people of this country and the white oppressors to stay together. So the process of reconciliation started by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was appointed by President Nelson Mandela, and Tutu was appointed to chair this commission. The main aim of this commission was to make sure that those who perpetrated injustices are brought to justice. They come before the commission, account for all what they did, and after they have accounted for what they did, even the relatives of the victims and the victims themselves were also asked to come and say their feelings and say their side of the story, with the aim of trying to make sure that there is peace between the two parties. South Africans live together. Tutu going ahead to even coin the name Rainbow Nation, saying these people that were divided, they're now living together in peace, black and white, sharing one common thing, the South Africa that they all love and that they all belong to.
Tutu Khumalo in Cape Town, thank you so much. And for more, we can bring in Annelie Serfontein, a South African journalist and filmmaker. Annelie, thanks so much for joining us. Now, you met Archbishop Tutu when you were a young journalist and you made a documentary about him. How will you remember him?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think, I'm not alone today that I would certainly miss his chuckling laughter, because he had this ability to turn any a difficult situation, diffuse difficult situations by just using his humor. I will remember him as someone who was really small in stature, but had a huge presence. And the Archbishop of Canterbury said today that Desmond Tutu lit up the world. And I think that is the best way to describe him. Just like his fearlessness, that he wasn't scared to speak out about injustices, no matter where it was in the world, whether it was in Palestine, the Palestinian cause that he adapted, whether it was like LGBTQI rights towards the end of his life, which I don't think many men of his generation, would take up those types of causes.
A huge influence, obviously.
A huge influence and a very warm person, very human.
A term that comes up time and again in connection with Desmond Tutu's legacy is his invention and practice of restorative justice. Could you remind us what that is exactly?
Well, that was after democracy came in 1994, and both it actually came from from Nelson Mandela, that they decided to have the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, which was first in the world, where bitter enemies came together and put everything on the table: torture, killings, and all of that. But it was also a cleansing process, and it was created to sort of in the hope that both the oppressed and the children of the perpetrators could find a way forward to build this new nation. It has been criticized in recent years by younger generations, but I personally still think I haven't seen anything like that anywhere else in the world, and it certainly helped to sort of bring people together in building the nation.
You mentioned
Cyril Ramaphosa mentioned it today too, like it was an important legacy of Tutu. Sorry, yes.
You mentioned the younger generation there. Will Desmond Tutu's work continue to have an impact on the younger generation?
I think that this week there's been a rediscovery by young people, who was he and what did he stand for? And at many of the memorials, there were young people there, which was quite sort of heartening. But he also certainly has a huge influence on many of the younger clergy that in neighboring countries, like in Zimbabwe, the churches, they follow that sort of like trying to be a mediator between the political parties, but staying out of politics. So in some ways, his legacy also being followed in other parts of Africa, because, Africa, unlike Europe, many people are religious and listen to their religious leaders.
Journalist and filmmaker Anneliese Fontaine, thanks so much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much for having me.